Hey everybody, it's been quite some time, and it's time for another genre series. I haven't done a genre series in quite some time, and I was pondering what my next subject really should be. So lately I've been really watching a lot of foreign films, and a lot of Criterion films as well, just older films that I really want to get into and understand just the essence of what cinema is, and honestly the things outside of America per se. So recently I've seen a couple of things right here in my hand. Last night I saw The Devil for the first time. This is a very fantastic kind of gory revenge story that is very well done and very well executed, and honestly I can get into talking about the whole concept of the title behind what the actual killer of this movie is, and the person who's hunting him, who's trying to get revenge. There's a lot of dichotomy there. But anyway, I just recently saw this movie. I just recently saw The Orphanage. Del Toro produced this. He presented it. It is J. Bayona. Hopefully I said that right, but it's a Spanish film in an orphanage. I honestly thought, based on the trailers and also based on just my own imagination, I thought this was going to be a very cheesy movie. This is actually a very well done movie, and I actually really enjoyed this movie. And it's definitely Del Toro-esque. And so this is a very good Spanish movie. And the third thing I just saw was The Wailing. And this is a very great South Korean film. I honestly have been looking for something kind of along the lines of The Witch with a lot of atmosphere. I really love atmospheric horror films. And this movie is not like The Witch in the way it's the aesthetics of it all, but the atmosphere is drenched in this movie. It reminds me of a detective story mixed with a horror story, and it's fantastic. But anyway, I digress. I just recently saw all these films, and I just wanted to make a top 10 list of my favorite foreign movies of all time. And when I say my favorite, I am trying to broaden. I'm not trying to repeat directors. On top of, I am actually, for the first time, not making it officially a top 10. It's just 10 movies that I think you should watch. So it's kind of my top 10 films to watch, but there's no particular order in any of these, except for maybe number 1, which I'm sure you can guess. Hint, hint, wink, wink. There's a poster on the side. You probably can't see it if you're a new-time viewer. But anyway, let's begin. And actually, I will just begin with The Wailing. This movie floored me. I just saw this a couple of nights ago, and yeah, that's how much it affected me. It's in the top 10 already. I highly recommend this movie. It's very long. It's almost 2 hours and 45 minutes-ish, 2 hours and 38 minutes. I can't remember exactly the time. But it's kind of long, but it drags you along at a really glacial pace, but at the same time, it really entices you the entire time. There's little thing after little thing that keeps going on in this village, and this kind of clumsy police detective is trying to figure out what's going on. And he's hearing all these stories from different villagers and different people. He doesn't know who to trust. There's this mysterious Japanese man that he thinks is responsible for all these mysterious murders. These murders that keep happening within other family members. It seems like there's some kind of deity at work. Some kind of ghost, some kind of demon. We don't know. So I definitely highly recommend checking out The Wailing. It's actually on Netflix, but I like physical copies, of course. And so I would highly recommend this if you have time. Obviously, it's a long movie. Just focus on this movie. It's really fun. It's really good. I hate that it's one of those films that I hate that I've seen it. That way I can't figure out what's going on. I'll probably watch it again and share it with some of my friends. But definitely check out The Wailing. This movie is fantastic. All right, next on my list, we're moving from South Korea to Italy to a movie that I've recently saw as well. Cinema Paradiso. This Italian film came out in 1988. It is a fantastic kind of homage to film, and honestly the childlike wonder of this kid growing up in this little village town, and the only thing that really drives his life is working at this local cinema. Cinema Paradiso is what the cinema is called, and pretty much learns from the projectionist all the things that he loves, and honestly it just projects and portrays in his life. Because it goes from the very beginning of his life, where he leaves and he comes back. It's this long, epic movie, but it's super. It has so much heart to this film. Honestly, for people who really love movies, they'll understand how much movies mean to them, how much the whole process of directing or being behind a camera or just even showing movies to other people is so important to other people. And that's another reason why I love this movie, is because obviously I'm obsessed with film. And so I definitely highly recommend checking out Cinema Paradiso, my only Arrow movie in my collection. Totally worth it. Alright, next on my list we're going to go a little north and check out 2008's Let the Right One In. This is the Swedish version of the movie. I know they did an American version of this, and this director just recently made The Snowman, which I never saw with Michael Fassbender, but I know it was a flop. But despite all that negative stuff, this is one of the most original vampire movies I've ever seen. This crazy relationship between this young boy who is just kind of trying to figure himself out in this, desolate kind of cold Swedish town, obviously, where, there's hardly any light, and then there's darkness and all the time. And he meets this neighborhood girl, who happens to be a vampire, unbeknownst to him. And pretty much crazy things occur. Townspeople start disappearing. They're trying to figure out what's going on, and little by little you see this kind of romantic, in an odd kind of way, relationship between this vampire and this other kid. And it's a very unique film, and I would highly recommend checking this movie out. Let the Right One In is one of the better vampire movies I've ever seen, and honestly it's just a really kind of fantastic kind of approach to a genre that seems kind of dead, or undead. Alright, we're going to move on from that to a little bit more south. We're actually going to go to Germany, to a 2004 film called Downfall. This is an amazing German film about the fall of Hitler and the last few days that he went through. And now obviously this is dramatized, and you've probably even seen some hilarious YouTube videos where you see Hitler among a lot of other people, and then the dub underneath is completely opposite of what he's actually saying, because we don't understand German. And it's just really funny. Look it up if you know what I'm talking about. Obviously I'm being very vague about it. But this is a very fantastic film, honestly, about what is the psychological aspects of Hitler. Obviously we're not trying to sympathize with him because he's a nut job, but all the people around him who believed in him, and this is kind of like the downfall of this figure, this mythological figure. He's a literal figure, but he's also mythological in the sense people around him meant to him, and honestly, seeing them, crumble before their eyes, on top of all the usurpers and all the people who are just trying to continue his vision, or take it in a different direction, is a very insane movie. And honestly, it's kind of a great historical drama about what's going on in the time, and it doesn't sugarcoat it and doesn't glorify it. It doesn't really try to show that Hitler was he was a good man and he had some good things about him. No, it really just is a timepiece on potentially what could have happened, what could have occurred in this bunker when Hitler ended his life. And so I would definitely highly recommend checking out Downfall. It's a very good movie. It's also very long, but it's definitely worth your time, especially if you love history. Let's move on from there to another film. We're going to go back east, actually. Alright, now we are moving to Hong Kong in the year 2000. In the Mood for Love. This movie tugs on your heartstrings. It's about this couple who live in an apartment complex, and how strained their relationship is, because they both cheat on each other, but unbeknownst to them, they know about it, the cheating that they're doing, but at the same time they don't say anything about it. And so I'm honestly not giving this movie any justice. The long takes on this film, the cinematography, the acting, just the story in general is so enticing. It's really hard to describe, and honestly, I feel like I need to watch it again to help really just sell it to you. This movie has an amazing realist kind of approach to how actual relationships actually occur, and that's probably why it's so heartbreaking to see this movie unfold, because this is actually, it feels like real relationships. It feels like we're just peering into these people's lives, and we can honestly relate with this, because I'm sure many of you, and also myself, have seen many relationships rise and fall before our eyes, and it's a moment in time, and the ending of this movie sells it to me completely. This the message of the entire film. So I'd highly recommend checking out this movie. It's a very, you just be prepared to watch it when you do. but it's a very good movie. It's probably one of the best romantic movies of all time. I really regret actually making my top 10 romantic movies so early without putting this in, and also the Before trilogy. But definitely check this movie out, In the Mood for Love. Alright, we're actually going to move from Hong Kong to Japan, to probably the most widely acclaimed Japanese director of all time, and you know who I'm talking about, Akira Kurosawa. Now, there's 100 films, pretty much, and that's not 100, to choose from among his filmography. There's a lot of great things, but I think the one that sold me the most, the first one I ever watched was Seven Samurai, which I adore and I love. It's a very long film, and it's also a very fantastic film. However, the one that I fell in love with the most, just based on story alone, is Rashomon. This movie came out in 1950. This movie was kind of near the beginning of the height of Kurosawa, near right in the middle. There's a lovely sweet spot. This movie, I mean, let alone the movie poster of this movie, is just a fantastic way to sell this movie. It's 4 different accounts of a murder and a rape that occurs, and it's just one singular event, but it's more or less like the effect of being a bystander and actually seeing it from different perspectives. And it was one of the first times this has ever been done, seeing different aspects of where the story is, you know, leading us to. Now, there's truths and there's some lies within these people. And we're moving from Japan to Sweden, 1957's The Seventh Seal. Now, this is one of the first movies I've ever seen when it comes to foreign films. I actually watched it in a humanities class back when I was in community college 5 or 6 years ago, before I even had my master's. I watched it from one of my favorite professors that I actually still keep in touch with, The Seventh Seal. This movie, definitely a philosophical movie about biding time with death, hence the entire aspect of death coming for the soldier who just returned home from the Crusades, and pretty much him trying to figure out how and when he'll die. And it's this existential crisis that we're seeing happening between, honestly, death and this main character. And honestly, this is one of the first movies that actually made me think about what I was watching. And that's why it holds a special place in my heart. It makes me think about the bigger picture. It's not just showing me what's actually happening on the screen. There's something more to it. There's more meaning to it. And that's something that really, it really puts some perspective on what I was doing in my life at the time, and also just the things that I'm interested in. And that's why I love this movie so much. On top of the cinematography, the imagery, the acting in this movie, it's quite comical, but also quite sad at the same time. It's this weird art house film that I would highly recommend. And also it's Ingmar Bergman, who is a fantastic director that I really can't wait to see more of his films. Anyways, definitely check out The Seventh Seal. Alright, let's move over from Sweden to Canada, but also in the Middle East. And you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm showing you Denis Villeneuve's Incendies. This movie is a crazy psychological mystery drama, and between a mother, a daughter, a son, and this entire plot of trying to figure out what's going on about this family. This movie starts off with their mother dying, these twins, they're trying to figure out who their father is. She leaves behind some kind of puzzle, some breadcrumbs to try to figure out what's going on and with their familial history and their recent familial history. And so they're trying to figure this out. And I don't really want to talk about it too much because it's just a fantastic kind of movie that you want to see for yourself and honestly just unravel yourself, because it's this nice little puzzle. And Denis Villeneuve has done a million things ever since then, obviously the most recent being Blade Runner 2049. He's an amazing director, and this movie is highly underrated but not really well known unless you're a Denis Villeneuve fan. I know a lot of people who do know it, but also at the same time when I list off the movies that he has done, people are like, yeah, I've seen Prisoners, or yeah, I've seen Sicario, but then you go further back to like Maelstrom or Incendies, you haven't seen these movies. So I would highly recommend looking at the back catalog of a lot of people's movies, especially Denis Villeneuve and especially Incendies. Definitely check this movie out. It's a crazy ride. Let us move from Canada and the Middle East to Brazil. And I'm talking about 2002's City of God. This movie is a crazy movie from start to finish. And it's a long one as well. It's all in Portuguese because it's in Brazil. And it's just crazy film about it's a coming-of-age movie, a criminality movie. It's like a kind of a gangster film. It's this really insane film that starts off at the beginning of this main character's life and goes through his young adult life, and the amount of craziness that occurs throughout it, from a lot of deaths and a lot of drugs and of just a lot of violence going on throughout this entire film. Trying to find love as well. It's a lot of things, and it's a lot of things to digest and watch. And honestly, it's kind of hard to watch at some moments. There's some really crazy characters in this movie. One particularly crazy character. But I would definitely highly recommend checking out City of God, because this is one of the movies that will put some perspective of different areas of the world into your mind where we're not really comfortable going to these places. And that's something that I really enjoyed about this movie, because obviously I'm living, in a nice area where I don't have to think about these kind of things. And this puts some perspective. Yeah, it's Hollywoodized a little bit, but there are actual people out there who have to deal with things like this. And so definitely check out City of God. Just be prepared for a bumpy ride. Alright, finally, the last thing we're going to talk about is the movie I've talked about before plenty of times, I'm sure. It's my favorite foreign film of all time. I don't think anything's going to usurp it. And that's Pan's Labyrinth. I just got the Criterion not too long ago. But obviously I love this movie. It's my favorite Del Toro film of all time. It's such an amazing adult fairy tale about this fantastical world, the Spanish Civil War, and them colliding. It's just this realism mixed with fantastical elements about childhood that we don't want to really leave behind. It's really, honestly, to me, it's an essence that all of us have. Not enough of us actually tap into it enough. And that's what I love about Del Toro, is he taps into our fantastical imagery of storytelling mixed with the realist kind of factual things that are going on in real life. And Pan's Labyrinth is no exception. This movie is phenomenal. Obviously, I probably have used the word fantastic and phenomenal way too much. But if you haven't seen Pan's Labyrinth, definitely check this out. This movie came out in 2006. It's very dark. It's very tragic as well. This entire plot is very tragic. The atrocities of the Spanish Civil War, just going on under Franco, is just it really harkens back to history and why I love it so much. That's why I love Downfall, and that's why I love things that really just capture humanity in a nutshell. And that's what I love about this movie. Is this ultimately, all these movies are about humanity, and that's what I love so much about it. Is it captures stories, and it captures things that I have not seen before in a different lens. Obviously, these are all foreign films, and when I'm saying foreign, obviously I mean from America's perspective. So, have you seen any of these movies? What are your top 10 favorite foreign films of all time? No particular list. I just want to hear your thoughts. I want to check out more foreign films. I have a lot to check out, and I still have a lot to check out Criterion-wise. I'm just going to keep adding more and more. Tell me more foreign films to watch, because I would love to hear your thoughts on these things. So that being said, give me a like, comment down below, share this video, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.